65535. Okay, so the actual data is 1 byte, but the length is 65535. And now the way the code has been written, it is not actually checking what is the length of the data. Okay, so it is only looking at so basically there is another argument, SSL length, SSL3 length, but it is not looking at that. It's just looking at the payload length, and as a result it will return 6553 bytes. Now it means the 1 byte was so only 1 byte is from the victim data, and all other 65534 bytes are adjacent bytes, which is revealing some kind of data to the attacker. So this was the vulnerability. Now we'll go to another vulnerability, which is integer overflow. Let's look at this program. Now in this program, we are having a short integer, which is unsigned, and a character, and we are reading k from command line argument, and then this is the length of this is some kind of length that we want, and this length is assigned to s. And if s is greater than 80, we are not going to read from the buffer. Otherwise, we'll read from the buffer. So basically, we are trying to do a validation check on the length of the buffer. So for this, we are using this variable s. And the length of the buffer is specified by the user. The user wants to read something from the buffer or trying to write something into the buffer. So he's specifying the number of characters he wants to read or write from this buffer. And this argument is being passed as a command line argument and is assigned to k. And then we are checking whether this value is greater than or equal to 80. So is there anything wrong with the program? So is there any vulnerability that can be exploited? Well, if you look at the program, the main program is that here, the type of two variables is not matching. K is a signed integer because it is, that's how it is specified. And k is a signed integer. It is converting the string to integer. It is a signed integer. And if you look at s is unsigned short. And because of this type mismatch, the problem can arise. Let's see how. So here we are checking s is greater than 80. Is that right? Let's say k is equal to 100. So naturally, when k is assigned a value of 100, it will create a problem. But we have to understand one thing, that s is a short integer and it can have a range. It is an unsigned integer, so its range will be of, it is 16 bits, so 0 to, not 16 bit, so it is 65535. So the maximum range for this will be 0 to 65535. Now, if k is a number which is equal to 655370, then this will be rounded off and the value of s will be given accordingly, because value of s can lie only from 0 to 65535. So if I make this k equal to 65536, then s will become 0 because that's how the conversion will take place. And 0 is less than 80. But at this point, we are trying to copy 65536 bytes. So this is going to be created buffer. Again, something is buffer overflow will take place because there was an integer overflow. So this could create a problem. So if k is equal to 6556, the value of s will be equal to 0. K is equal to 65537, value of this equal to 1. 65538, the value of this will be 2. So buffer bound check can be successfully bypassed. Why? Because of this type mismatch. This was example 1. Let's look at example 2. Again, if we are using k as some kind of checking on the bound, then it can lead to another unexpected problems. Because in all these calculations, k will be equal to 0. So if you are in the similar example, like we were assigning value to s and then checking the bound, Similarly, if this we try to use this value of k and checking bound, the bound check would be successful, but ultimately the problem would be that it can lead to problem somewhere else. So the programmer has to understand the arithmetic overflow. What we mean by arithmetic overflow, we know that all our numbers that can be stored on our system can have a limited range. And after that, they will start cycling. So for example, if I have a character can have a range of, and I'm assuming an unsigned character, the character can have a range of 0 to 255. So if I try to assign 256, it will accept this value, but the value that will be assigned to this character variable would be 0. Then if I assign 257, it will become 1. Now, similarly, if there are unsigned, they are signed integer, the range will be from -128 to 127. So if I go beyond 127, if I go beyond, so it will not become 128, rather it will become -128. So if I add 127 plus 3, so instead of 130, what I'm going to get is minus 126. So this could lead to problems. So if a programmer does not understand that addition on integers unsigned or signed can lead to overflow in this manner, so the resultant value will appear to be less or it will be negative, but we are expecting something else. So some of the checks may be successfully bypassed. So this could be a problem in the program. So for example, let's look at this particular case. In this particular case, k would, okay, let's look at this particular case. In this particular case, let's say k is within the range. We are not having any overflow here, but when we multiply it by size of int, so naturally this particular value may result in a overflow. And as a result, the value that you're going to expect will be less than this. For example, k is equal to, so let's again take the example of, let's say, integer. So let's say the maximum value of the k could be 0 to 255. And let's say the size of integer is 2. So as long as I'm assigning some value which is less than 127, then 127 multiplied by 2 will not result in any overflow. But if I assign a value, let's say 130, 130 into 2 is actually 260. But 260 will again cycle through, it is a kind of modulus operation. So 256 will become 0, 251 will become, 256 will become 0, 257 will become 1, 258 will become 2, 259 will become 3, 250 and 260 will become 4. So naturally, we are expecting that buffer will be of size 260, but actually because of these overflow, the buffer is assigned a value which is 4 bytes, which could create problems. So buffer overflow, so integer overflow needs to be understood. So whenever this kind of overflow occurs, this will be a very difficult bug to find, but this bug could result in problems. This is an example 3, in which again we are reading a value from command line argument and checking a bound. But if k is is assigned integer, so naturally this value can be negative. So if this value is negative, then this check will fail and we'll come to this point. But in case of memcpy, it expects this character to be a positive character, so this will be interpreted as a unsigned integer, and the value will be copied into the buffer and buffer overflow can take place. So we have to be aware of this kind of unsigned to signed conversion in our programming. Similarly, in this particular case, if this index is negative, then actually this check will be clear. So naturally we will come to this point, and now instead of table, so this is where our table was stored. Let's say this is our low memory to high memory. This is low memory to high memory, and this is how our table was stored. So now if this index is negative, some memory before table would be modified. So table -1 will be actually some bytes which is just below the table 0. Then so this will really result into memory corruption, which can have other consequences. Now why that could be other consequences? Because it could be some kind of pointer address. So if this is a pointer address and that is being overwritten, then it could create the problem. In the last class, I asked you about that if the stack and buffer are going in the same direction. So naturally, if someone can actually generate a negative index value, so the same effect can be achieved by overwriting the return address. So we will not have any kind of protection there. Anyhow, let's go to next example. So let's say what this program is doing first of all. This is some kind of socket output. So there are two buffer. So it is trying to receive something into buffer 1. It is trying to receive something into buffer 2 through sockets. And then it is copying something into buffer 1 with size this. Okay. So it is copying content of buffer 1 and buffer 2 into out. Okay. And what it is doing, so there are two integers, size 1 and size 2. So it is copying the integer content of buffer 1 starting from size 1 into okay. So it receives something into buffer 1 through socket and receives another, sorry. So two buffers are being read, okay, and this is, let's say, through some socket. Some data is coming into buffer 1 and some data is coming into buffer 2. And then we are actually looking at buffer 1. Let's say the very first byte of the buffer 1 is telling the size of the buffer, and the very first byte of buffer 2 is telling the size of the buffer 2. So we are copying this size 1 and size 2. Okay. So we receive something into buffer 1, we receive something into buffer 2, and then we look at what is the amount of number of bytes in the buffer 1. And let's say the very first byte of buffer 1 is set to this particular number. So the very first byte of buffer 1 is telling us the size of the buffer. So we are reading one integer from buffer 1 into the size 1. Similarly, we are reading one integer from buffer 2 into size 2. So basically size 1 and size 2 are set to the size of the buffer and size of the buffer. So the total number of bytes which are received through buffer 1 and buffer 2. Then we are calculating the total number of bytes. And if this total number of bytes is greater than length, we are not doing anything. Otherwise, we are copying the buffer 1 with size 1 data to out. And because size 1 bytes have already been written, so from out plus size 1, we are writing the size 2 bytes read from the buffer 2. So basically, buffer out is filled with buffer 1 and buffer 2. So first of all, buffer 1 is copied into out, and then the buffer 2 is added to or appended to out. So the program looks all right. The only problem could be that if both size 1 and size 2 are in the requisite limits, but some of these two may be negative, leading to an overflow, depending upon what is the size 2 and what is size 1. So as far as size is concerned, size is size 1 plus size 2. But what if size 2 is negative? If size 2 is negative, then this particular check will be successful. And as I told you that when you are copying, the MEMS CPY will treat it as a positive number. And therefore, the buffer overflow can take place because of this conversion. Because of the treatment of the argument as positive by MCPY, so it may be a negative treatment. So it will treat it as an unsigned integer. So here the attacker can manipulate it in such a manner that size 2 is a negative quantity. So naturally size is always less than size 1. And because size 1 is within the permissible limit, so this check will be okay. And the data will be written into out. But the problem here is that this particular entity will be considered positive by MCPY, and therefore this check will not be. So if we want to do the correct check, so we should have checked whether size 1 is negative or not, size 2 is negative or not. And then only we had proceeded. If one of the quantity is negative, we should actually exit the program. So this is the home assignment for you. So you are going to read about bleeding hearts vulnerability and stage fright vulnerability and try to find out what are the details on these. Now we are going to come to string format vulnerability. So string format vulnerability is that if you look at printf and scanf statements, they require a format string. This format string tells you how the remaining list of parameter is to be treated. So %d means that it is an integer, etc., etc. And if you look the way the stack, what will happen in this particular case, when the main function is called, when printf function is called, it will push parameter CBA, then it will push the format string. These are the parameter to the printf function CBA and the format string. And then there will be the return address, then the previous frame pointer, and then the local variable of printf. So now what we are doing, we are passing only A and B. So stack had some content. So here the frame is ending, and frame was ending at this point. Then parameter B, A, and format string is pushed. Then the return address, this and this. Now, way the printf will try to do, it will try to actually look at the %d and look at what is in the parameter stack. So it will try to read the first parameter from the stack. Then it will read the second %d and read the second parameter. Then it will read the third parameter. So the third parameter was not part of the activation frame of printf. So it is reading something which is from the activation frame of the previous function. Why? Because printf is not checking whether the number of parameters are same as required by the format string. And because of that, the problem can arise. And the problem here is that compiler cannot do anything about it because the way the printf function deals with its input parameter is not known to the compiler. Now this heap overflow vulnerability, I asked you to read about that, and most of you might have done it as an assignment also. So heap is organized as a link of free blocks, and this link information, apart from links, it also keeps the information about the size of each heap chunk. So OS keeps information on whether a heap chunk is occupied or not, and heap overflow vulnerability is trying to target overwriting these pointer information. Now, why do they want to override this pointer information? So the purpose is to corruption of the heap data. And ultimately, the goal is that this heap data corruption can actually corrupt some data variable. And if this data variable was a kind of pointer to a function, then maybe we are actually able to create an attack which is going to lead to arbitrary code injection. And if there is some information about the library data, then if somehow we are able to read that data or somehow able to corrupt that data, then you might jump into some other library. Or so the basic idea is to overwrite function pointers in the heap data for some arbitrary code execution or some targeted code execution. So this is the main point. So in the heap, so somewhere in the heap there might be some call to the library. So we want to gain access to that, try to read that data. So it requires information on how actually heap is organized by operating system. So generally, heap is organized. So you can consider heap as consisting of heap chunk. Some of the heap chunks are allocated, and some of the heap chunks are not allocated. So heap chunks are allocated. Then operating system is going to keep information about the size of the previous chunk if it is free, and some kind of information on size of chunk itself, and then it keeps some bits for checking for its own internal housekeeping. And then there's the user data. So in case of, if you look at the allocated heap chunk is keeping information about the size of the previous chunk. If it is free, then it is keeping the size of chunk, and then it is keeping some information on AMP. If you look at the P bit is, if it is 0, it means previous chunk is free. If P is equal to 1, then this is the very first chunk, then there cannot be anything before that. If you look at the free chunk, then it is keeping the size of the previous chunk, size of the chunk. But apart from that, it is also keeping two pointers, pointer to the next chunk and pointer to the previous chunk, and unused space. So if you look at a free heap chunk, when it is converted into an occupied chunk, then the occupied chunk does not require these pointers. So the actual space available for allocated chunk would be more than what is available in the unused space for a free heap chunk. So in case of unlinking, the heap chunk will be removed from the free list, and these pointers will be manipulated so that if there are 3 free heap chunks, if there are free heap chunks, so then this is pointing to next. This is pointing to next, and iska previous is pointing here. Iska previous is pointing here. So naturally, if this chunk is allocated, then these pointers need to be modified. So this pointer is now no longer pointing to it. This should point to this, and this pointer should point to this. So whenever free heap chunk is allocated, then this allocated chunk needs to be unlinked, and for that we need to manipulate these pointers. So if there is a problem in the code which is written for this unlinking, then it could lead to problems. For example, a user may try to free 2 blocks one after another. This is known as use after free. So here the user used the block A, then here it frees it, and then again he does go for the second free. So after second free, these 2 blocks would be linked like this. So initially A was freed, and it is now pointing to B, and again B gets freed, so this gets pointed to this. So because of this kind of scenario, so after second free, what will happen? So A is the free pointer. So A ka forward pointer after B becomes free. A ka forward pointer is pointing to B, and because there are only, let's say, 2 chunks, so B ka pointer is pointing to this, and this situation looks. But when the third block is also freed, then the same information about A will be kept here, and now the linked list looks like this. And now if someone tries to allocate it again, then C is actually occupying the same information, same location as what was in the chunk A. So actually there were only 2 chunks. So this is basically nothing but the copy of chunk A. But the pointers are different here. So C gets allocated the same address as A, and this can be used to print what A was containing earlier. So if the code for unlinking was not written correctly by the person who developed this library, then it could result in the fact that a chunk which was already freed may also be again become part of the free block list, and this could lead into problems, because if the same chunk is allocated to some other identifier, then it could be like kind of data leakage. So similarly, if there are multiple frees, they can also create. So basically, if the free program is not properly written, then multiple free can actually lead to the corruption of the linked list, which is representing the heap data, free chunks of the heap. And when they are allocated again or deallocated again, it could actually result in overlapping of the or reading the data which was not actually allocated, which shouldn't have been allocated to a program. So I think most of you actually read about this. I gave you, I don't know, I didn't give you, but did I give you this link? Let me see. This is another link. You can go through this link also. Okay. So we'll start from here in the next class. And if you have any questions or any doubts, you can ask me. Okay. And meanwhile, let me see how many of you actually submitted the assignment last time. So I gave you a question on attendance. Have you answered that question? Let me see. So 75 of you have turned in, but I don't see 75 on the attendance. That's okay. It's always the same thing. Let's look at what did you do with the assignment. Are there any good answers? So let's take a Himanshu Verma. Let me stop presenting. So I do not think you people have done it very seriously. Let's look at the Keshav Garg. Let's see what you have done. Okay. So I asked you because the basic purpose of the previous class was to ensure that you people interact with among yourself and try to give a answer which is quite good. But as I suspect that most of you might have just cooperated with 2 or 3 persons, and I'll find a similar assignment of that. Okay, anyhow, so I'll go through these questions and then come back to you and then try to find out which one has the right, given the right answers. Then I'll also ask you to make some presentation, 5 to 10 presentations on heap overflow. Let me see if someone has done it. 76 people have done it. Let's see that. Okay, so I try to go through these presentations, and on Friday we will have a presentation of the student who had given me the best answers. So I'll stop at this point, and we'll start here from the next class. If there are any questions, you can ask me the questions. Any questions?